いるのかな。
20+ years since its beginnings, Fatal Frame remains one of the more unique franchises within the survival horror realm. Its heavy usage of cameras is a calling card for the series, one in which I'm surprised few other titles have pulled from. Unlike other series like Resident Evil or Silent Hill, Fatal Frame goes with a Japanese setting, pulling heavy from the folklore of ghosts. What you end up with are some of the best the genre has to offer, both from gameplay and a story perspective. For this video, I'll be looking at the first 3 titles in the series, the ones that saw release on PlayStation 2. While the Xbox had a release for 1 and 2, it didn't see a release for the 3rd title. Coming into this video, I've completed Fatal Frame 2 in the past, played a fair amount of the first title, but going in blind with Fatal Frame 3. Each have their strengths and weaknesses, and all deliver excellent horror experiences that are some of the better ones around.
お姉ちゃん。
Some things to note before diving into Fatal Frame. I played all 3 with the PCSX2 emulator, widescreen patches and some slight upscaling. A few visual glitches here and there, but minor for the most part. The first game I played with the English dub. It's okay, nothing terrible, but nothing great for the most part.
I captured a ghost with this camera. This camera has the power to expose things the normal eye can't see. I remember the incident from which I learned of its unique power to capture ghosts. He began to murder every person in his sight.
The second and third I played with the undub versions. This way you could play in Japanese with English subtitles, far more fitting for the setting. If you're interested, you could find these versions on CDRomance, although there are bits here and there without subtitles, a bit of a trade-off.
ずっとあなたの夢を見ていた気がする。繰り返し、繰り返し。でも、もうあなたの夢は見られない。
Due to some dark footage and YouTube not playing nicely with it, I did brighten some footage in editing. Fatal Frame, based on a true story. Well, not really. That was a marketing addition for Western releases. It's influenced by various haunted locations and ghost stories from Japan. It's incredible how much they got right from the get-go. The atmosphere, the horror, the camera system. Of course, the game has its share of issues, but the sequel would fix them up. Even then, there are aspects of the first Fatal Frame that the other titles fell short of. Fatal Frame's Prelude begins in late September 1986. We start off as Mafuyu, a young man in search of a missing novelist at the Himuru Mansion, a mansion with a dark history. The novelist went with his team to conduct research for an upcoming novel. We go through the basics of gameplay here. We have a flashback to something cryptic, along with our first encounter with a spirit. We cut to 2 weeks later. We now play as Mafuyu's younger sister, Miku, our protagonist. She arrives at the manor to find her missing brother.
My brother was here. What is this place? Did someone just...
The series' main calling card is the use of a camera obscura, camera designed to see beyond our world. Miku and Mafuyu have a sixth sense as well, something passed down from their mother. This serves as our weapons against spirits. The choice of a camera received pushback from higher-ups during early development. Other possibilities considered include shining lights at ghosts. Another was the use of hameyas, ceremonial arrows to drive back evil spirits. One reason for the use of a camera is how it allows us to get up close and personal with these spirits. In his childhood, game director Makoto Shibata would awaken in the middle of the night to hear a procession of spirits making their way down a nearby road. His dad gave him a half-broken camera which further stimulated his imagination. These memories helped to serve as the foundation of what would make the Fatal Frame series what it is. From the get-go, the camera system is well thought out and executed. Holding the square button allows you to move the view around at a faster rate, helpful when a ghost leaves your frame or is moving at a fast pace. Afterwards, you can let go for a more precise shot. If you want, you could play Fatal Frame in first person for the most part if you switch to your camera view and move around. There was some consideration to make the game first person during development. When it comes to the spirits we'll deal with, there's little usage of jump scares. Instead, it's common for the game to introduce us to these spirits through cutscenes. Ones that are well directed and do a great job of heightening anticipation and dread of what's to come. The presentation of these spirits is fantastic. The unsettling ways they move, their voices, and the soundscapes during combat all add up to a great experience. As we use a camera, film serves as our ammo. There are several different types of film. Some do more damage but are rarer to find. Those you want to save for more difficult encounters with spirits. If you're not playing sloppy, you shouldn't have major issues with running short on film, at least the less powerful film. Fatal Frame isn't as resource management heavy as other survival horror titles. Instead, it focuses on the combat and its point system. How much damage you do and how many spirit points you receive depend on a few factors, like letting your camera charge max out before shooting, get a shot of a spirit close up. Not only will you do more damage, you'll earn more spirit points. Of course, there is risk-reward here. Let them get closer for more damage and points, but face the greater chance of damage. You use the spirit points to upgrade your camera. You can upgrade your damage, your camera range, and the speed of charging. As we progress further, we can unlock bonus functions, from pushing ghosts back, slowing them down, stunning them, or following their movements. You'll need a spirit stone to make use of them. We can find these throughout the manor. They are more rare to come by. The sequel would change the system to a charge-based one, a system which I preferred. The system here does promote a more cautious approach to using these bonus functions. The game's difficulty does ramp up in the last third or so, where you'll want to have these on hand. There's a decent variety of spirits to deal with. Some are quite straightforward, while others will weave in and out of walls and floors. Very otherworldly in their movements. This is one of those perfect games for headphones. Not only for the excellent sound, but for the positioning of spirits. As they dart in and out of sight so often, your ears are vital to determining where they're going to come from next. Camera will also help you progress further through the mansion. Sometimes a talisman seals a door that we need to remove. Taking a picture of the door will show us an area elsewhere. We need to find that area to remove the talisman. Early on, it's new areas you're looking for. Later on, as you progress through the mansion, it's trying to remember where that location was in the photo. Another use of the camera is coming across non-combative spirits. Through sound and vibration, we'll receive notification of their presence. Some are passing by. Before we know it, they're gone. You could get a snap of them for extra points. This one in the early game gave me a chuckle with the name Bro's Shadow. It says a lot about Miku as a character referring to her brother as Bro. These spirits are an efficient way of guiding the player where to go next. When in doubt, follow the spirits. With this camera system, they set a solid foundation for moving forward with the series, making tweaks along the way to improve past shortcomings and keep things fresh. It's a system that, for the most part, remains unique to the series. I'm surprised that few other titles have taken influence from Fatal Frame's combat, although to be fair, it's never been a huge seller. This approach allows for an interesting twist on combat, something that if you overplay in horror games leads to a loss of horror. Other games make up for that with weak weapons or limited resources. Fatal Frame eschews these for the most part, instead focuses on these up close and personal encounters with spirits. And it's more than enough to drive the series forward. Even hours later and several games later, it still finds ways to invoke fear in you. As far as issues go, I did find the Spirit Stone system a bit iffy, something they would course correct in future titles. The other is switching film in your camera. Until the third title, you have to go to a menu to change your film. There are many non-aggressive spirits that are easy spirit points. That said, you want to use your weak film on it. So if you're using more powerful film equipped from a fight, you might be switching back and forth for a quick shot on the irregular. What doesn't help is you have to go through a couple menu layers to switch your film, something that does get annoying over the course of the game. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot to complain about here. Speaking of cameras, Fatal Frame is classic survival horror in its presentation. There's a nice mixture of fixed camera angles and the camera following us. I appreciate how you only need to hold the run button to move forward once moving. You don't always need to be pushing the stick. These camera angles help with the feeling that something's out there watching us. The game makes great use of these angles to invoke fear. Some I wouldn't call an all-out jump scare, more of a gotcha moment. Fatal Frame does a fantastic job of building its atmosphere with its sound. From the sound of spirits to the music, everything's on point. But there's another element that many horror games can forget: silence. There are stretches or rooms where the music cuts out altogether. Footsteps might be the only thing you hear for a time. So when another sound emerges, it hits with that much more of an impact. Even a small whisper of a spirit's enough to send shivers up your spine. It's something that the future titles in the series didn't make use as much of in the puzzling design choice. Don't get me wrong, 2 and 3 are great in their horror, better in many ways, but the reduction of these sections of silence is a bit puzzling. Another element I love is the use of controller vibration, one that we seem to take for granted over the years. When done right, it's a fantastic way to enhance immersion. They do a great job with it in Fatal Frame. It's used for replicating the heartbeat of our character, how it speeds up in the presence of ghosts. A great way of telling the player something dangerous lurks nearby. It's one of those cases where some games are better played through a controller than a keyboard and mouse. Another bizarre design choice, it's something they didn't use as much in these sequels. In regards to exploration, the mansion itself is quite small. That said, it's not like some Resident Evil-centric mansion where every room seems unique, so it takes more time to acclimatize towards. As the game progresses, we move to further nights, progressing deeper into the mansion along with backtracking. There's enough variety each night progression, so there doesn't feel like too much padding. Puzzles are okay, nothing special compared to other survival horror titles. Many of them are finding the note with the combination to enter on a door. The difficulty becomes digging through your notes to find the right one, because you'll be collecting a whole batch of notes. The reoccurring puzzle with rearranging the carvings are much better and can take a bit of thought and trial and error. As the game progresses, they get longer to complete and more difficult. The last one took me several tries to get right. With that, let's go through the story of Fatal Frame. So now we're moving into spoiler territory. The way the story unfolds is what you expect of survival horror titles. Plenty of scattered notes. Some audio tapes are about the mansion, courtesy of the author and his team.
Is she the one causing this disaster? All of those earlier deaths, Koji, Tomoe, all of them? Am I the next to die? The rope shrine maiden ritual, as told of in legend.
On the note of creepy noises, the development team mentioned several interesting occurrences during the development of the series. Knocking was heard during a recording session when no one was at the door. One developer late night swore they heard children's footsteps. A fluorescent light break into pieces for seemingly no reason. One late night work session saw the director seeing a spirit in the conference room from his desk. Embellished stories, overactive imaginations, something else? Who knows? There's a bit of a missed opportunity throughout the series to take more of a show don't tell approach. The camera is perfect for it, and it's not like it doesn't. Seeing these spirits throughout gives us little bits and pieces of the story, but feels like they could have pushed it further. Giving notes to the player does work, but can be a bit of a crutch that the story relies on too much. There are flashbacks here, but receive more prominence in the following titles. Something I appreciate is the correlation chart. It shows the relationships among characters that we come across and learn about. Something I wish other games would use more often when we collect information. Something that isn't in the sequels and another puzzling design choice. I love to take notes during these kind of games. Signalis, for example, I had a whole pile of notes in trying to piece everything together. So what's been going on here? There's been a ritual passed down through this mansion for generations, the Strangling Ritual. A ritual to keep the gates to hell closed, to prevent spirits from emerging. A ritual is performed every 10 years, using a rope shrine maiden as the sacrifice. And it's unsettling as it sounds. A game of demon tag with children determines who will serve as the rope shrine maiden. Not only that, but another child from the demon tag serves as the blinded maiden for the blinding ritual. Which again, sounds unsettling as it is.
What's that?
In the 1830s, a young woman named Kyrie was set to serve as the rope shrine maiden. In the decade-long wait until the ritual, the rope shrine maiden remains isolated from the outside world. She is to sever all attachments in order for the ritual to succeed. Before the ritual, she meets and falls in love with an unnamed man. The family has this man killed to sever her attachments. This causes guilt and doubt within Kyrie, and the ritual fails, causing the calamity. Since then, the spirits have wandered this mansion, with her as the strongest spirit. It's quite a tragic tale. The way it unfolds throughout the course of the game is well done. We'll learn the tragic fates of the author and his team as they become spirits. And as Miku, over the course of a few nights, she'll have the curse of the Strangling Ritual take shape, both figurative and literal.
Mafuyu.
So what about her brother Mafuyu? Well, this is where the story gets a bit clunky. He bears a strong resemblance to Kyrie's lover. It's why she didn't attack him. So once we defeat her, she goes to perform her duty as a rope shrine maiden. She will keep the gates of hell closed. From what I understand, this will now be for eternity. No other rope shrine maiden will take her place. So instead of leaving with Miku, Mafuyu stays behind with Kyrie to comfort her.
Miku, I must stay.
What are you saying?
I think I can help her. Miku, you go on without me.
Why? Because she reminds him of her old love? Plus, you have to consider the relationship between Mafuyu and Miku. They both have a sixth sense and struggle with other people. They understand one another, and they're the only family they have left. Both their parents are dead. Throughout Fatal Frame, we'll learn more about their mother. She too had the sixth sense in the use of the camera, which she got from her mother, or Miku and Mafuyu's grandmother. Their grandmother did live at the mansion for the time. So there are distant connections to this place for Miku and Mafuyu. The excessive usage of the camera drove their mother mad.
Mom! Why? What happened?
And speaking of the relationship with Mafuyu and Miku, I am aware what happens later in the series even though I haven't played the later titles. We'll cross that bridge some other time. But back to the ending. The whole idea of Mafuyu abandoning his sister to comfort a woman he never knew doesn't sit right with me. There are theories that Mafuyu is a reincarnation of Kyrie's lover. I mean, beyond the resemblance, there's not much to work with. A major coincidence otherwise that someone like Mafuyu came along. But there's no real sign within the game about this. The game needs to put some work in to earn this sacrifice of Mafuyu. And yes, playing on the harder difficulty results in an ending in which Mafuyu leaves with Miku. Thing is, it's not the canon ending as established by Fatal Frame 3. So this ending doesn't really feel earned. I'm going to come back to this ending when discussing the ending of Fatal Frame 2. There are some similarities in the ending, but in Fatal Frame 2 it earns it. An ending to one of the better stories I played in the game. This doesn't happen here and leaves a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. But otherwise, it's a great first entry in what would become a long-running franchise. Take that experience and feedback of the original and move forward. And boy, did they ever deliver with its sequel. 'Fatal Frame 2 is an iteration of the formula and improves on everything across the board. Well, except for moving from 60 FPS to 30 FPS. But everything else is more refined, resulting in a more confident sequel. Most notable is the story. First game had a solid story with a frustrating ending. Feedback from players of the first Fatal Frame was that it was too scary. They dialed back on the horror and focused on fleshing out more of a story to drive the player forward, finding that this results in what I consider the scarier title. Some tweaks to the gameplay result in it being more scary, but more of that derives from the story. Fatal Frame 2's story is one of my favorite stories I've come across in a game. It's that right level piecing together mystery, but driving more personal stakes to the story. With that, you end up with the best of the trilogy and one of the best survival horror titles ever made. In Fatal Frame 2, we play as Mio, and for bits, Mayu, her twin sister. They take a trip down memory lane of visiting their childhood home. They visit a spot in the forest nearby that was their secret hideaway. Mayu sees a crimson butterfly and falls into the forest. Going after her, the two end up in All God's village, the Vanished Village, one that disappeared many years ago on the eve of a ritual the village would perform. We find the camera obscura. Mayu has a stronger sensitivity to the paranormal and walks off again. With that, we need to find Mayu and what happened in this village. What caused it to disappear? What is this ritual? Can we set things right? The camera system makes some tweaks to the foundation laid down in Fatal Frame 1. One change to the upgrade system and power-ups is spirit orbs. In the original, we had spirit stones. You would collect these to use your power-up lenses. Here, it's a charge-based system. You can replenish it through combat. One upgrade ability allows you to charge your power-up lenses faster. For upgrades, you need a spirit orb first before you could use your spirit points to upgrade. A bit odd, but it does give you that incentive to explore your environment. There's something on the game's pause menu. Instead of showing how many spirit points you currently have, it shows your total throughout the game. Okay, cool, but that doesn't help me now. I want to take a quick look at my current points so I could see if I have the required amount to upgrade. Another nice quality of life improvement is offering a type of film that's very weak but infinite. Better for taking pictures of spirits that want to attack us. Save the more powerful film for combat. Although you still can't change the film without going into the menu. Combat has more variety. One notable change is the greater number of encounters with many spirits. You may face 2, 3, or more ghosts at one time. You could also do combo hits, get a Fatal Frame shot and follow up while they stagger back. This is a small window and can be tricky to pull off. Keeping them in frame to get that next shot can be tough. The variety of spirits here is excellent. One of the more notable ones is the Falling Woman, very unsettling. Another is the Drowned Woman. The game pushes for you to get shots of ghosts at the last possible second. Otherwise, you do nowhere near as much damage and won't stun your opponent. The original gave you more breathing room in regards to powering up your charge. Here, you have to close the gap on spirits to start charging, so there is more emphasis on risk-reward. For best results, you want these ghosts as close as possible before shooting. This results in a more intense and scary combat encounters than the original. In regards to exploration, All God's Village is more separated than the mansion of the original. It's still a small space, but there's more to work with here. Some sections are more isolated from one another. Granted, it's not like the original was all about the whole interconnected element like a classic Resident Evil title. Fatal Frame 2 uses several of the same ways to guide the player of where they need to go. For example, the use of non-aggressive spirits to show the player where they should be going. Nice small quality of life improvement is looking at the map will now show a small picture of the highlighted room. Areas are more distinct than the original, and helps to get a feel for the village. While there are stretches where we'll stick to mostly one area, there is more backtracking as the game goes on. Another way the game guides the player of where to go next is through the use of crimson butterflies. Butterflies play a major role in the story of Fatal Frame 2. For most of the game, Mio and Mayu will be separate. With the stretches of Mayu in tow, it never feels like an escort mission. They're short enough and the game dials back on combat encounters. There are stretches where the game cuts to Mayu when they're separate. Short sections of her following the crimson butterflies. She has a stronger sensitivity to the paranormal than Mio. These sections playing as Mayu have a very otherworldly feel to them. Nothing I call scary. Something more mysterious and enticing about them. The music plays a large part in getting this mood across of this kind of wonder that Mayu is experiencing. I may be looking into it too much, but Mio's arm movement when descending stairs reminds me of a butterfly's flapping wings. Instead of audio tapes like the original, we have a spirit stone radio. This allows us to listen to the voices of ghosts throughout the spirit stones they leave behind after a battle. These are very creepy with the sounds and their content. As well, throughout the game, we can listen into Mayu's thoughts with her charm with the radio. These thoughts update as we progress through the game. We get them when we get new spirit stones, so it's not like you need to always check on them to see if there is new thoughts from Mayu. With that, let's dive more into the story and some of the game's highlights, so more spoilers ahead. Fatal Frame 2 knocks out of the park in regards to its story. The game takes a village ritual and ties Miu and Mayu into its narrative. It's different than how the first Fatal Frame was more about coming across this ritual and being an outsider looking in. This works fine, but the raising of personal stakes adds so much more to the story. The way it's able to weave in this ritual into the now with Miu and Mayu is masterful in its execution. The ritual in question is the Crimson Sacrifice Ritual, conducted every decade or so to keep darkness from the hellish abyss at bay. This ritual makes use of twins. The second-born twin, which the village considers the elder twin, strangles their other twin to death. Upon death, they throw the dead twin into the abyss. The ritual successful, a crimson butterfly will emerge from the abyss. This is their soul emerging. The village believes the twins will now join as one soul with the completion of the ritual. With how many butterflies we come across, there must have been many successful rituals throughout the years. Lots of twins in this village. I mean, twins are more likely to have twins of their own. Although they had a backup ritual in case there wasn't a set of twins ready to go. One which used an outsider of the village as a sacrifice. Of course, something must have gone wrong with these rituals at some point, right? Or what happened to this village? Well, twin girls Sai and Ye were set to be the next sacrifice for the ritual. Sai wants to go through with it, but Ye does not. Ye escapes the village, but Sai stays behind. The village goes through with the ritual, but only with Sai. The ritual fails and results in the darkness engulfing the village. It traps the villagers as spirits and throws them into a loop the night before the ritual occurs. With the arrival of Mio and Mayu, Sai possesses Mayu. It could be hard at times to know where Mayu's actions end and Sai's begin. She's trying to right the wrongs all these years ago with Mayu and Mio in their place. While Fatal Frame 2 stands on its own for the most part, there are ties to the original. Ryozo was a folklorist who made his way to All God's Village to learn about the ritual. He met both twins. He returns to the village on the day of the ritual to only find Yae. They would marry and have a daughter and move to the mansion from the original, their daughter being the grandmother of Mayu and Mafuyu. The way the game blends these sets of twins together is so well done. But it's not like Mio and Mayu aren't their own characters without any agency. Mio, the second born, is very protective of Mayu. As a young child, Mayu hurt herself while playing, making it hard for her to run to this day, something that Mio still feels guilt over. But due to Mayu falling under the spell of Sai, they will separate at times. Most notable is a section where Room locks Mayu in, and Mio has to find the key. It's heartbreaking to leave her behind as we need to find a way to let her out, breaking their promise for a time. We also get to see the effects the Crimson Sacrifice ritual can have on past twins beyond Yae and Sai. One of the game's highlights is learning about the twins of Akane and Azami. Akane, the remaining twin after the ritual, feels great guilt and loss of her twin sister. Her father makes a doll in the image of Asami. However, the doll becomes inhabited by an evil spirit. This leads to one of the game's best encounters, dealing with the spirit of Akane and her possessed doll. You have to distinguish between the two to damage Akane. This to me is the peak in regards to the game's horror. The section leading up to that first encounter is a masterclass in horror and suspense. The puzzles you do of lining them up, you know something is going to happen here, and it does. On the note puzzles, they are improvement, although nothing to write home about. Quick brain teasers, in a few cases looking up notes of where to line what. I did enjoy the recurring puzzle lining up the colors of these spinning tiles. Itsuki is another one that we get to see the impact of the ritual on the remaining twin. We can find him locked up early in the game. He sees Mio as Yae, again emphasizing the relationship between the two set of twins.
Yae? どうしてまだここにいるんだ? あなたはもうすぐ祭りが始まってしまう。そうだったら
He went through with the ritual with his twin brother, but the ritual failed. Yae and Sai are set to do the next ritual. He devises a plan to help them escape. The guilt of his twin's death causes his hair to turn white, and he ends up taking his own life. There is a great stretch where we lose the camera obscura for a time, although its execution is a bit spotty. Very much a classic case of cutscene incompetence. Come on, Mio, why now? But it's a great classic horror trope. Instead of making your foes more powerful, make the player weaker. Of course, the game does dial back on the ghosts in this area until you retrieve your camera. It's easy as well to get lost in this area with the winding hallways and corridors. It's a great relief once you have your camera back that you can make your way through at your own rate. The last fifth or so can be a bit backtrack heavy. Hey, it is survival horror, so that is expected. That said, some of it feels like a bit of padding. Nothing too egregious, but it is noticeable. But the ending more than makes up for it. Beautiful, bittersweet, and heartbreaking. Mio and Mayu complete the ritual that Yae and Sai couldn't do all those years ago. Mio, as the second-born, strangles Mayu and casts her into the hellish abyss.
お姉ちゃん、ずっと一緒だから、いつまでも一緒にはいられない。でも、これで一つになれる。だからいいよ。殺して。どうしてあの時殺してくれなかったの？手が首になってたけど、子供の頃から離れてたの怖かった。ずっとずっとずっとずっと。
With that, the curse lifts from the village. Mayu emerges as a crimson butterfly. If you don't feel something from the moment where Mayu's butterfly says goodbye to Mio, check your pulse because I'm sure you have no heart. This serves as the canon ending, as established in Fatal Frame 3. It doesn't come as a shock when it happens. As you put the pieces together, you know what's coming. The game makes great use of notes, flashbacks, spirits, the spirit radio, and Mayu sections to build and build. As tragic as it is, you know it was coming to set the village spirits free. End Result is one of the best stories I've come across in the game. Well, not quite at its level, it's up there with Silent Hill 2 and how well it's able to execute its story. Of course, there are other possible endings. Near the end where Mayu leaves to complete the ritual, you could be like Yae all those years ago and leave. Another ending from completing the game on the harder difficulty results in Mio saving Mayu, but Mio becomes blind from the abyss. Now it's Mayu's turn to be the protective one in a dark twist. For the Xbox version, there's an exclusive ending where Yae and Sai go through with the ritual. Mayu and Mio are able to escape the village in the happiest of possible endings. But moving forward, the default ending is canon. Having an ending that's a bit of a downer can be hard to pull off. But when it's well done like it is here, it really sticks with you. Which in the end makes Fatal Frame 2 an absolute classic of the survival horror genre. Hell, games in general. One of the best examples of a sequel improving on the original. After laying down a solid foundation with the original, they took their experience and feedback to deliver what's the best title of the three. I haven't played 4 or 5 yet, but many consider 2 to be the best in the series. With that, let's move on to Fatal Frame 3, a title that I'm going into blind. Fatal Frame 3 is a frustrating title. There are stretches where it's the peak of the trilogy. Its changes to the game's structure and flow makes for a more engaging experience. Progressing through the manner of sleep before waking up is a nice change to the formula, and it works for a good portion of the game. But as the game gets closer to its conclusion, the structure leads to tedium, backtracking that gets into padding territory. Some ideas tossed in feel half-baked. By the last fifth or so, I'm more than ready for the game to wrap up. The story is excellent at points, but tries to tackle too much at once. The theme of survivor's guilt and deal with loss is a solid foundation to build on, but with the structure of the game, it gets put on hold for stretches. The elements of the ritual in Fatal Frame 3 are once again great, but it's a bit choppy in execution. The elements of the ritual don't flow as well with the plots of the protagonists like they did in Fatal Frame 2, which makes Fatal Frame 3 a great if frustrating experience. It has all the makings of being the best of the three. There are stretches where it feels that way. I appreciate the changes to the formula, but with all these changes comes a loss of focus. While we play 3 characters in Fatal Frame 3, our protagonist is Rei, a freelance photographer. She lost her fiancé Yu in a car crash. Miku returns from the original. She's working as Rei's assistant. While shooting a rumored haunted house, Rei sees Yu. Following you, we end up in the Manor of Sleep. This is the main area where we'll spend most of our time in Fatal Frame 3. Pursuing you, she sees a ritual taking place with stakes, before snapping back to reality. Dreaming that night, she returns to the Manor of Sleep. There we find the Camera Obscura. Seeing others within the manor, we're pursued by women covered in tattoos. Like you would do with any woman with excessive tattoos, you run the other way and not get involved. We awaken back to Rei's home, with Miku commenting that Rei has been having many nightmares as of late. The game's structure is the main tweak to the Fatal Frame formula. Our dreams will take us to the Manor of Sleep. At first, it's a slow progression, unlocking parts of it pieces at a time. Then we'll wake back up. We're back at Rei's home, a very cozy home, at least for a time. There is something eerie here, one that only continues as we progress through the game. In past videos I mentioned I love getting to explore the home of our protagonist. For example, one of the highlights of Deus Ex Human Revolution is going to Adam's apartment. It does wonders for giving us insight into him as a character. While I wasn't a huge fan of the game, I did appreciate the intro of Resident Evil 3 Remake giving us time to wander around Jill's apartment. It did a great job of giving insight into what she had been going through. Same thing happens here with Rei. There's plenty of flavored text to give insights into how she's been impacted by the death of her fiancé Yu. Boxes tossed away into closets. Things she can't bear to look at and go through. But she doesn't have the house all to herself. Not only is Miku her assistant for her work, she also lives with Rei. And of all the people she could have in her life to support her after the death of Yu, Rei is lucky to have someone like Miku. She helps keep the house tidy. She makes sure that Rei isn't working herself too hard. It's all very sweet and endearing. She's so cheerful even with the pain of losing her brother, a key plot point as the game progresses. Oh, and don't forget about the cat. And when night falls, we return to the Manor of Sleep. I love these little intros each time we go in. They do a great job of building out that atmosphere. At the beginning, they serve more as foreshadowing. As we progress, these little intros give indication of what we should be doing. It's another case of helping to guide the player. These sections in the manor can vary in length. Some trips to the manor are quick trips before we wake up. Some will have long stretches before returning from the dreaming world. As we return from the manor, elements begin to make their way into the real world, like the tattoos starting to appear on Rei. While it's only one manor and not spread out like the village in Fatal Frame 2, they did a great job of keeping things distinct. Some great usage of fixed camera and dynamic camera angles do a lot of the heavy lifting here. When it comes to the combat system, it plays like Fatal Frame 2 with a few more tweaks. At long last, we could change our film in real time instead of going to a menu. When you want to take a snapshot of a non-aggressive spirit, all it takes is a quick change, then back to what you use for combat. It's so nice to finally have this available. As well, the combat encounters are faster, not in the sense that spirits move around that much faster. They've reduced the downtime between when spirits are vulnerable for shots. I didn't mind it while playing Fatal Frame 2, but after the change of pace of 3, it's quite noticeable. Yes, waiting for the right shot could build tension, but sometimes the encounters could go on too long in a second. One other change is the game having more encounters where spirits will come out of nowhere, something that the first two games shied away from, either through shifts to the music and controller vibrations or a cutscene to introduce them. This still happens here, but there are more gotcha encounters where spirits will pop out. Enemies are great as always, some great designs and unique mechanics to fights. One of the more notable enemies are these girls with the hammers and stakes, ones that figure in heavily to the story and the ritual. I love this attack if they get you where they try and impale your feet to the ground. The game makes recurring use of these rock puzzles. Of the recurring puzzles so far in the series, I found these to be the most enjoyable. Slide them the right length to get them to 0 to progress. Quick but fun little brain teasers. There are these shadow puzzles that pop up in the last stretch of the game, which while interesting, I found to be more trial and error. More or less brute force my way through them. One new addition is the use of a notebook. While we still collect plenty of notes, we'll also make other entries in our notebook. For locations, people, events. It's written from the perspective of Ray. It's a nice summary of our findings. Makes it easy to find and look up anything we've come across. While I still miss the visual correlation chart from the first, the notebook gives a more investigative feel piecing things together, something the plot makes use of in its structure. There are points where Ray won't pick up notes until we have certain information. Yu's old room has plenty of old books and notes, but until you find relevant information to fill out the notebook, Ray won't pick these up. Throughout our time in the manor, we could take pictures of certain happenings that we could develop at home. We could give these to Miku to do research on, which will fill out our notebook further. With that, let's move into the plot and notable stretches of the game, so spoilers ahead. Ray's not the only visitor in the Manor of Sleep. We find a young woman within the manor and go visit her at the hospital. Like Ray, she's the sole survivor of a tragedy, that being a plane crash. She's much further along than Ray is with this curse, spending most of her time sleeping, and after time, she's gone. We have to figure out how to stop this curse, else Ray will face the same fate. One thing I love about Fatal Frame 3, at least for time, is how it established this rhythm, and then breaks it on the regular. At first, we head to the manor in Ray's dreams, return home, and repeat the process. One of the best ways it breaks a pattern is through Ray's home. As I mentioned earlier, there's great comfort here, even with the sorrow she's going through. But the further you progress, the more elements from the dream world begin to emerge at home. Spirits start to show up throughout the house. What I love is the game doesn't go the cliche route of using audio stingers with these moments. The first time I walked down the stairs to see feet behind a curtain threw me for a loop. Now, these spirits never attack us at home. It's not like Silent Hill 4 where hauntings would emerge as the game progressed and could hurt you. Well, they can't hurt you here, they sure can scare you. Most notable is the bathroom scare. There's a different camera angle to grab your attention while approaching. You can see feet under the curtains. You walk in and then see a spirit behind you walking by in the mirror. It's masterful in its setup and execution. First it gets you with the feet, and then the spirit walks by when you're thinking that was it. Again, no audio stinger to draw attention to it. At one point the game does a dream within a dream trick, where Ray wakes up and finds herself pursued by a spirit within the attic, only to wake up. Something that felt like the game could have used again because it's a great moment. Granted, it can be tough to pull off the dream within a dream scare after you've used it. The game loves to use the structure between the house and manor to set up cliffhangers, and on a notable moment within the manor, like seeing you in the distance to follow. But home isn't the only place where the game will break its pattern. After a few go-throughs, we now play as Miku through the Manor of Sleep. The game does foreshadow her presence within the Manor of Sleep as she sings a lullaby that we heard within it. But where she starts her journey is familiar territory for her. It's the manor from the original. Well, sort of, a dream version of it. The layout of which rooms connect is different, and it's only a small part of it. At first, I had concerns they were going to go overboard with reusing old areas, but that wasn't the case. Poor Miku, having to come back here again. She's dealing with a lot of grief over the death of her brother Mafuyu. The body language reflects that. The way she holds her one hand to her chest while walking or in an idle stance. A nice moment was navigating my way through the stretch, ending up somewhere else and wait a minute, we're back to the Manor of Sleep. A nice little aha moment of realization of where I came from and where I was. Miku plays different from a combat perspective. She has a smaller range but more powerful attacks. She has a couple of abilities unique to her, like slowing down time for a brief period, or getting an additional charge to do even more damage. Max this meter out with fatal frame timing and you'll decimate any spirit in your way. Miku's able to enter crawl spaces that Rei is not able to do due to her size. And of course, the game does toss a couple of terrifying encounters with spirits during them. And then we have another character enter the fold. Up until this point, we've got a few letters from a man named Kei. Unaware of the death of Yu, he has done research into this Manor of Sleep. To tie back to Fatal Frame 2, Kei is the uncle of Miyu and Mayu. Mayu is dead and Miyu is having a hard time dealing with her loss. To go into detail as to how these dreams work. Those suffering from the pain of the loss of a loved one will see them in their dreams. The manor beckons them with the promise of reuniting. This causes them to sleep more and spend more time dreaming. If they go too far in to try reunite with their dead loved ones, they'll end up as a spirit trapped in the manor, like we saw with the woman at the beginning of the game. So with this setup, we have Rei with her dead fiancé Yu, seeking him out within the Manor of Sleep. Miku has her dead brother Mafuyu. Mio seeks her dead twin sister Mayu. 3 different cases of survivor's guilt and ways to look at them. You would think in this case, you'd play as Mio, but you don't. Instead, you play as her Uncle Kei. And this is where the game begins to stumble. Everything up until now with Rei and Miku has been great. I couldn't find a source on it, but according to the wiki's initial design plans were to have us playing as Mio, that would have been a far better choice. But even with that, there's already playing going on in the story. You already have the arcs of Rei and Miku. Yes, the presence of Mio makes sense with the loss of her twin sister. That said, I felt Fatal Frame 2 ended on a conclusive note where that's where her story could have ended. It's like they took 2 games worth of story material and put them into one. When you have so much going on, you can't devote as much focus to one area. This is where the story and later sections of Fatal Frame 3 stumble. What doesn't help is that Kei's sections are a notable step down from Rei and Miku. He's able to move Chesso the way that Rei and Miku could not. Something that becomes notable and annoying further in is how some sections close off depending on the character. Area you unlocked as another character may not be accessible for your current character, which leads to some cases of exploring taking longer as that shortcut isn't available to who you're playing as at the moment. I would have preferred that once you unlock a location, everyone could access it. Kei is far weaker than Rei and Miku with a camera. You have the ability to hide with Kei, but it's next to useless. Instead, running away from encounters with the tattoo woman work fine. What's very annoying is that there are these combat sections with Kei that you can't avoid. You're locked in the room with the spirit. These encounters take way longer due to his lesser abilities with the camera. It's not fun or tense, instead becomes a chore. When I would enter a dream and I'd be controlling Kei, I would roll my eyes. These sections could have worked if they tried something more like the stretch in Fatal Frame 2 where we had no camera. The only thing we could do would be to run or hide. Be a nice tweak to the formula. Or even better yet, cut these sections altogether and replace them with Mio. Even then, you have a game that's noticeable in its length compared to the prior titles. I didn't have any major issues with the length of the first 2 games. 2 had a bit of padding at the end, but nothing too bad. Here, I wouldn't have minded if they cut a good 1/5 or so of the game for a tighter experience. This is where the game's structure, which worked up well until this point, begins to work against it. The backtracking that worked well before turns into excessive padding. One addition late to the game is Purifying Light, an idea that feels half-baked. Pick these up to ward off the darkness. If your candle runs out, more powerful spirits will come to attack you. In the way, it feels like a game timer. Keep moving or else we'll send you more powerful spirits your way. Which could be an interesting idea, but again feels half-baked. Like they want to have something for the last quarter or so of the game to be more challenging, so they threw this in. Something the game didn't need. There's a choice near the end of the game with Miku that presents an interesting dilemma. Too bad the execution is a bit of a disappointment. While Miku knows that following Mafuyu deeper into the manor will result in trapping of her spirit, she does want to be with her brother. You have the choice of continuing after him or returning to reality. Thing is, both end up with the same result, Miku falling under the curse of the tattooed woman. That said, going after Mafuyu leads to one of the best scenes in the series. With that, Kay arrives at the house so he can end the curse once and for all. And then begins the worst case of backtracking in the series so far. First as Kay, we need to collect stakes spread throughout the manor. Again, getting locked into rooms of mandatory combat with Kay isn't fun whatsoever. Although his last stretch has this fantastic cutscene with the ritual.
まさかそんなはずは。
And then begins the final dream with Ray. Alright, let's go finish this. But first, let's do another annoying fetch quest of items spread throughout the manor. We only came from one with Kay, so here comes another. To say it's annoying is an understatement, but it more than makes up for it with its final boss and ending. Although before that, let's go over the ritual itself. What's been going on here with the tattooed woman? What is this place? The ritual this time around involves impalement and tattooed priestesses. The priestess receives the tattoos to bear the sorrows of the living and the dead. She herself is one who has suffered great loss. Once she has all the tattoos and carrying all the pain of the living and dead, they impale her with 4 stakes. The lullaby we hear throughout the game is to come and put her into eternal rest so she could carry over to the other side. Of course, like the last 2 titles, something went wrong here. The tattooed woman we see throughout the manor is Reika, the last tattooed priestess. Before becoming a priestess, she met and fell in love with a man. He left the village to study at one point when a disaster struck the village. Reika's family died and she had no way of reaching him. She decides to become a tattooed priestess. When this man learns about her choice, he goes to free her. She's already been impaled and he goes to awaken her from her slumber, but the others discover him and kill him. This pain overwhelms Reika, causing the curse to spread. This is the unleashing. To prevent its spread, they seal the shrine into the dream world, hence the Manor of Sleep. I did find it a bit more difficult to follow than the prior 2 titles. Granted, there's much more going on in the story. The ritual can get lost in the shuffle at points. It's too bad it doesn't blend as well into the story like it did with Fatal Frame 2. Our last encounter is with the tattooed woman, and good lord is this fight a spectacle. The other final bosses in the prior 2 titles are fine, but they went all out here. The unsettling soundscape is a notable element. There are these stretches where we warp to a different area where she pursues us. If she touches you, you're dead. You have to run until these stretches end. The worst thing that could happen is running into the invisible wall and you can't go any further and she's right behind you. And it's another fantastic ending. Thanks to what they've done, the spirits can go free to the other side, you included. For him to live on, Rei must continue to live her life. It's a heartbreaking end, and the default ending leaves Kei and Miku's fate up in the air. But if you beat the game on a harder difficulty and complete a few extra tasks, you can see they're both fine. As well, Kei brings Mio over to the house to meet Rei and Miku. As mentioned earlier, I came into Fatal Frame 3 blind. For the first few hours, I was thinking it was maybe my favorite of the 3, and there are stretches where it is the best of the 3 so far. But as more elements of the plot begin to pile on, the way it's structured begins to work against itself. It's still a great game, but gets in its own way at times. As far as ranking the 3, 2 is the best. Between 1 and 3, I have a hard time deciding which I prefer more. The first 3 quarters or so of 3 are better, but some stretches during the back end drag the game down. The first Fatal Frame didn't have the same highs, but never the same lows. But they're all worth your time, whether for the first time or replay. They scratch a niche with the camera system that other survival horror titles can't. One in which I'm surprised few other titles have taken influence from. Its use of Japanese folklore makes for an experience that differs from other survival horror titles from the East that use the settings of the West. It's a series that's been going on 20 years at this point. And who knows, with the remasters selling better than expected of 4 and 5, there may be more in store for the future. It's been nice to revisit 2, finally finishing the first, and experiencing 3 for the first time with this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.